From the Foundation Studio right here on Biloxi's Back Bay, welcome to Super Talk Outdoors, where we celebrate every single Monday at lunchtime the world-class outdoors of the state of Mississippi. I want to thank you for joining us on the powerful Super Talk Mississippi Radio Network, or on Super Talk TV at C Spire TV. But if you're listening on Facebook or YouTube or your favorite podcast, it's October the 10th, 2022. Well, last weekend was a lot of fun, I might add, with a lot of work, but a lot of fun. On the 3 farms that I lease up in the Mississippi Delta, we planted food plots. And best way to describe what we experienced, besides getting the job done, was dust. A lot of dry conditions in the Mississippi Delta, really across the state of Mississippi. So it was incredibly dusty, and but we had a good time. We did sort of traditional planting. We had already cut up the soil at 2 of the farms. We had to wait for the farmers to get done on the 3rd farm. Our farmer, Travis Dunn, who we lease land from, is a really good friend. He hunts with us, and he comes down and fishes with me down here in coastal Mississippi, but just a terrific friendship. He got a no-till drill. So we, on one of the farms, just exclusively did the no-till drill. My other friend, Lance Reynolds, has a tiller on the back of his tractor, and we used it to sort of break up, in some cases, cotton stalks that were left over. And that tiller was incredible, just beautiful. What it did to the soil and what it did to get rid of the cotton stalks was awesome. And then we came in behind it with a no-till drill. And on that particular farm, we haven't fertilized yet, because we literally have to put the fertilizer on top of the ground, and we're waiting to see sort of what the rain situation is going to do. On the other 2 farms, we were able to turn the soil and hopefully protect to some extent the fertilizer. You can't leave fertilizer in the open in this heat. When this sun for too long, it starts to lose its punch. So I bet on the rain. I had to bet on the rain, because when you've got your friends up there helping you, we don't pay people to do our food plots for us. We got to do it while we can do it. And most people who are listening to this show know that. It's just you rally the troops, you get it done, and then you pray for rain. You pray for rain, and that's kind of what we're doing for sure. Hey, let me bring my friend, the producer for Super Talk Outdoors, into the conversation. Cal Curley. We don't talk to him enough. He's just been terrific support for this show. Cal, how you doing, my friend?
Well, it is Monday after game day, so a little struggling.
Cal does the music in the Superdome in New Orleans for New Orleans Saints games. And for people who are Saints fans who watch this show or listen to this show, the Saints had an incredible game yesterday. They won the game. They had a couple of turnovers and some tough injuries and maybe a few penalties they shouldn't have had, but they persevered and won that game. And I always say when they win the game, it's because Kyle played amazing music. If they lose the game, it has nothing to do with Kyle. It has everything to do with a bad game plan. So you did well yesterday, didn't you, my friend?
Apparently I did, yeah. We still gave up a few more points than I think we were comfortable with, but in the end, the result was a W.
It was a W. Fun game. Taysom Hill had what is called a game of the ages. He had an incredible game, and he'll be in the highlight reel for a long time to come. That was fun to watch, wasn't it?
It was. And to tell you how kind of locked in I was in my particular job, I did not find out or realize until this morning that he had 4 touchdowns.
Isn't that something? Well, that means you were in the zone, Kyle. You were in the zone.
Taysom had 3 running touchdowns and a passing touchdown. I know the passing touchdown, but I forgot that he was responsible for 3 rushing touchdowns.
Hey, a couple other things. One is Cruising the Coast was on the coast this past week. It ended on Sunday, yesterday. As we were headed back home from the Mississippi Delta, lots and lots of classic cars were headed north. In fact, the traffic was quite remarkable going north. But what I said on the show, my Coast View show, is that it was a world-class event in a world-class location with world-class weather. But the weather was incredible. And here's the thing. A lot of people who enjoy the outdoors also have classic cars, and they were down here as well. But it was an incredible week, wasn't it?
It really was. I don't think you could ask for better weather for an event such as that. I think the high maybe topped out at 84 the whole week, and that was towards the end of the week because I believe there was a small cool front that pushed through in the first part of the week, or it might have reversed. Yeah. So temperatures in the morning, upper 50s, low 60s, maybe some mid 60s here and there, and then 80s, upper 70s, low 80s for the week. I mean, you really can't beat that for driving up and down Highway 90 along the beach in a classic car, or even sitting at a restaurant that's along beachside to watch it. It just can't beat it.
Yeah, what a great event. Hey, you heard me mention that my experience in the Delta, we got a lot of work done. It's incredible how much work we got done in 3 days. But dusty conditions, man. You do weather on the air. When are you going to get us some rain, my friend?
Looking like maybe Wednesday, possibly Thursday. But I've seen it. I've seen it time and time again in the past month and a half where you would check weather on Monday and it would say a good chance of rain coming in Wednesday or Thursday, and then you check it Monday afternoon or Tuesday morning, and that chance is gone.
It was as high as over 60% now. Look, at least in the Delta, it's like 15%. I think Sunday's back up to like near 60%. So we just need some rain. Get us some rain. Do a rain dance for us, buddy.
There's, Saturday we drove up to Pearl River County to PRC and played baseball at the Dub, and there were some ponds that I have never seen that low before driving up Highway 53. I mean, really, the dock that they had, I'm used to seeing water right below it, maybe a foot below the dock. You can see every bit of 4 and 5, 6 foot posts.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, speaking of water, let's thank you, my friend. Thank you for joining me, and thanks for what you do to support this show. Let's shift gears now. Move over to my friend Houston Havens, who's the waterfowl program coordinator for the Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. And first, we'll just say good morning, or good afternoon. How you doing, Houston?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me again.
It's good to see you. Heard what Kyle and I were talking about, and my experience in the Delta was nothing but dust. Again, we got a lot done, but man, Kyle pointed out in his drive over to Pearl River County the number of ponds that he saw that had very little, if no, water in them. That's what I experienced in the Delta this weekend. We've got a 100-acre cypress lake at the main farm, and it's virtually dry. Over at the farm in Chula, there's a little bit of water in some of the areas there, but the duck holes are all dry. It's super bone dry. And the same is true for the farms we have up in Minter City. But that's a story across the state of Mississippi, isn't it, Houston?
It is, depending on the activity that you're trying to get accomplished or looking forward to it, this can be an advantageous time. People that are still have a lot of cotton to pick in the fields, they're still wanting it to hold out and be dry for a little while. Maybe the people like yourself that have deer food plots planted are waiting to, get a little bit of rain, but not a huge rain, to really pack that ground in or anything, but just enough to get things going. And then, of course, as a waterfowl biologist and waterfowl hunter, looking for quite a bit of water between now and late November to come down the pipe so we can have some good wetland habitat.
Well, my friend Travis Dunn, who is the farmer we work so closely with, and we lease a bunch of land from him, he and his partner Andy have some land up in Lambert, and he was telling me over the weekend that he was actually able to get out and do some blind work that he needed to get done, and they actually took a grinder down in the duck hole and was able to clear out some brush and stuff. So the dry as long as we get some rain, the dry conditions this time of year really do facilitate prepping and doing some wetland habitat enhancement and whatever. So that when the rain comes, it's a better scenario. You hear people doing that all over the state, don't you?
That's exactly right. We work with a lot of private landowners, and we always tell them, take advantage of, what Mother Nature gives you. Even though, it may not be what you're wanting right now, it may be an opportunity to get into some of those areas that you haven't been able to get into in a long time and, do some brush removal, some woody vegetation control with something mechanical like a mulcher or something like that. It can pay dividends down the road.
It will definitely pay dividends down the road. Hey, we're going to visit with Houston Havens when we come back from break. He's the waterfowl coordinator, program coordinator for the Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. We're going to talk about, what is he here going on across the state? What's going on in public lands as it relates to waterfowl hunting? They've done some great job. They've done a great job on public land the last few years. I would bet that this year is going to be no exception. And high demand is the way I would describe some of the public land waterfowl hunting that is going on in this state. So anyway, when we come back, we'll continue our conversation. We'll see you after this.
Whistling that sweet soul for him. I said 3 Mississippi to this land called home. I'll breathe Mississippi till I'm
leading the conversation on Mississippi's outdoors. It's Super Talk Outdoors with Ricky Matthews on Super Talk Mississippi.
Mississippi.
Welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors. Love coming here every single Monday to celebrate the world-class outdoors of this amazing state. The capital of the outdoors in America. That's what Mississippi is, the capital of outdoors in America. And I tell you every single Monday why we can legitimately make that claim. And certainly one of the reasons that we can make that claim is that we have some great duck hunting throughout the state. Certainly it's ebbed and flowed over the years, but the reality is when you prepare well and you've got water and the winter coordinates with you the way it needs to, you can have some good duck hunting in Mississippi. Mississippi Delta is terrific, but it's not the only place in Mississippi where there's great waterfowl hunting. We've got Houston Havens with us. He's the waterfowl program coordinator for the Mississippi Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. And hey, before we get back on subject, Houston, I had the opportunity this past Wednesday to join some friends in a skeet shoot or a clay shoot over at Providence Hill. And they've got a terrific setup there. My friend Ben Thompson and I tagged along with the group, and in the group were, Chris Gurris was in the group, Alex Littlejohn from the Nature Conservancy, who, by the way, just got a great appointment, presidential appointment to an important group, conservation group. And then Will Primos was with us as well. And Will was so much fun to be with. What you see on his show, Truth About Hunting, that's what you see in person when you get to know him. Of course, he's joined me here on Super Talk Outdoors a couple of times. Just a great human being. But that's a great facility. Of course, the weather was great last week, but we're lucky to have a facility like that in this state, aren't we?
We are. That is a great facility. We've got 3 shooting ranges across the state that are open for public use as well. And so, this time of year, a lot of people are getting out and making good use of those facilities. I should probably be doing more of it myself. I'm ready for a little wing shooting, so I don't start off quite as rusty as I have in past years. But just a great opportunity overall. Just like you said, when the weather is that good, it's really good to get out. And
so Providence Hills is a club, so it's I don't think it's generally open to the public. Ben, of course, there are special events, which is what I went to this past Wednesday. And it's smart of you to point out that the state of Mississippi, through the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks, has created some of the most incredible. If you need to get some shooting practice in, the facilities across the state are world class. Really, I mean, that's the best way to describe it, isn't it, Houston?
It is. There are always people there, whether it's pistols or rifles or, like you said, doing the clay ranges, taking that opportunity to get some practice in before they're getting out in the duck blind or the dove field or what have you.
Really cool. Well, like we said when we went to the break, the situation across the state it's good, actually, when you think about we're a lot of dryness and a lot of dust, of course, but the reality is it's a good time to get out and do some work and get your setup ready to go. You're not having to deal with a bunch of mud. As I mentioned, my friend Travis getting a grinder in some areas where he normally wouldn't be able to get in. He said they got close to getting stuck or maybe got stuck one time, but you would never even be able to get a tractor into some of these areas. Now you can, and it's going to be, you can open up holes and do some required maintenance, et cetera. But you guys spend a lot of time getting the public areas right, don't you?
We do, and just like you just mentioned, that's what we're doing on our wildlife management areas right now, and national wildlife refuges are also doing kind of not necessarily last minute, but getting close to the last minute of management in these wetland units that are going to be flooded and providing valuable wetland habitat through the fall and winter when ducks start to arrive in Mississippi. One of the advantages of a relatively dry fall and winter that we seem to be headed into is having the ability to put water on when we want to. Of course, it's going to cost more to pump water when it's really dry, but typically what we see in a year that's shaping up to start like this one is that public lands that have pumping capabilities will do really well even if we don't have a relatively high number of ducks to start the season. It can seem like there are a lot of ducks if you're in the right spot, and it's kind of what we saw last year with the kickoff to the season. Public lands did really well because they had the majority of the flooded managed habitat that ducks were coming to.
Unbelievable. It's yeah, right. When others weren't seeing ducks, you guys were seeing ducks, and year after year after year, you've put the energy into making it happen. So as a result of that, it's in high demand, isn't it?
It's in very high demand. Public lands, if we continue like we are right now with being relatively dry, public lands will have some really high use. There will be people that know where the water is for sure. That they're going to know where the birds are. They do their homework ahead of time and really take advantage of public lands across the state.
So why don't you talk a little bit about someone's planning to do public land? Talk through the process. What should they do? How do they plan for it? How do they be sure that they can get in and actually enjoy the hunt?
Yeah, so our wildlife management areas offer a variety of hunting opportunities, of types of hunting opportunities for waterfowl hunting. Right now, our WMAs that have draw hunts have applications open, and that's going to go through October 15th. So there's still time to go online at mdwfp.com and look for those draw hunt applications. Basically, what this allows hunters to do is to pick which areas that they want to apply for. They can actually pick which dates they want to apply for. So if they know they have something going on, they don't have to prioritize every day that the area is open. And after October 15th, we'll close down applications. Draw winners will be notified within a couple of weeks after that if they were selected to hunt on an area for a particular date and hunt unit. And so a lot of people like that because it provides them a little more of a quality experience. They know where they're going to hunt and what day they're going to hunt, and they can kind of game plan around, manipulate their schedule if they need to, and also go and look at that area, look at the place that they're going to be hunting later in the year and kind of get prepared for, especially if they haven't been on that property before.
The one thing, you and I think maybe chatted a little bit about this when we first got together, but, duck hunting can be incredibly safe to do, but you got to pay attention to the safety requirements. And, it's unfortunate, though. It seems like every year or so we hear of someone who wasn't adequately prepared, maybe fell in the water, maybe their boat, took on water. You forget, when you're in that boat, you can think about gun safety and all that. All that's for sure. But if you're out and you hit a stump or the water's a little lower than you expected and you hit a cypress knot and suddenly you're in a precarious position and your boat starts to take on water and you don't have a good backup plan for getting out of there, when you're in the cold water, you cannot stay in that cold water for very long and you're in serious trouble. You spend a lot of time preaching the safety requirements of duck hunting, don't you?
We do. That's a reason that state wildlife agencies put such an emphasis on hunter education and hunter safety courses, just because it really is, not just something to go through the motions, to be able to buy a hunting license. It really is important, and it's things that, if you take it seriously, will definitely benefit you and could potentially save your life if you run into a bad situation.
Yeah, one of the places we hunt, it's pretty shallow there. You don't necessarily know that it's shallow there when you're on the water because you can't necessarily see the bottom, but you're going along, it's super cold, you're making kind of a pretty decent run to where the blind is. But we always say that, look, the water here is about 2 feet deep. So if for some reason we were to go under, don't sit around and try to fiddle with the boat. Just make your way to shore as quickly as possible. Don't mess around. And by the way, the process of making your way to shore is going to heat up your body, obviously, so that you can get to where you need to get. So get to shore, and we'll worry about what we do after that. But you darn sure, if you can help it, you don't want to stay in the water, do you?
No, absolutely not. Getting out, getting warmed up, getting dry, on those really cold days. Hopefully we will have some cold days later on this wintertime, but that's the priority. Don't try to be tough, just getting safe, and you can always get back, whether it's another day or later the same day, you can always get back out there once you take care of yourself and enjoy a hunt later.
Well, one of the things that we were hoping for, and I'd be curious to see what you're hearing from the experts, is that we might have a bit colder than normal winter and maybe a more wet winter. What are you hearing these days?
Yeah, I was expecting you to break out the Farmer's Almanac and go through the details here. That's what I'm hearing as well. Just with those type of long range forecasts. It really. Mississippi, the weather fronts need to come from the north because we're dealing with a migratory game bird when we're talking about waterfowl hunting. And so consistent and long duration cold fronts from the north are typically what we need to see to get ducks moving south. And so, here early mid-October, it's a little bit early to be, making any kind of predictions or anything like that. But we certainly hope that that's going to be the case, that we can get some sustained cold fronts. But like Kyle said earlier, we're shaping up pretty good already for October. It's feeling pretty good outside. The teal season was pretty good. We had some blue-winged teal that were passing through right then when we expected them to with our hunting season. And so, indications right now are that it could be pretty good. We've still got a long way to go.
Long way to go. A lot of things have to fall into place for a duck season to be a good duck season, and they haven't necessarily been falling into place the last 2 or 3 years. So we have Houston Havens, who's the waterfowl coordinator for the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. And when we come back, we'll talk about, kind of what do we look for, and what have some of those challenges been in the years past. We'll see after this. Welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors here on the Super Talk Mississippi Radio Network. I appreciate you joining us today. This is where we celebrate the incredible outdoors of the state of Mississippi. It's that time of year, so it only makes sense that I would have someone like Houston Havens, who is the waterfowl coordinator for the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks, on the show today. We had William McKinley on last week. Houston, when you look at the work that William and his team are doing around the white-tailed deer, doing the collar work and the GPS work, and what they're learning about deer movement and all, it's pretty incredible what they're learning, isn't it?
It is. We've always had really strong relationships with Mississippi State University, doing a lot of really good management, applicable research, and they're definitely doing a lot of good things in the deer world there for sure.
Yeah, these collars, how far these deer go. One buck swimming the Mississippi River and going to the same 150 acres plot, year after year, going over 30 miles and then coming back basically the same course. It's incredible. And one doe that went, miles and miles and miles, just incredible. But we're learning, as we know, that there's a transition time that William talked about last week that's happening now in this part of October. And so the deer you have on camera now won't necessarily be the deer you have on camera going into the opening day of hunting of gun season. And it's just interesting to know that, which is another reminder, as William pointed out well, that you never know what's going to show up. You think but the camera gives you one slight dimension. There's just so much more to the story, and how much a buck will travel, not just during rut, but just in general, is pretty incredible. And again, so many dedicated people at the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks doing so much amazing work. It's just really cool. Also, one other thing the other thing you think about this time of year, besides duck hunting and deer hunting, is the fishing on the coast really starts to pick up this time of year. Redfish and speckled trout. I've had wonderful visits recently with Sonny Schindler and others who have a great story to tell about how great the fishing's been on the coast this year. That's certainly been my experience, too. Just some of the best trips we've had in a long time offshore, because the weather's really been cooperative. Hadn't had any big tropical events this year, thank God. And so anyway, fishing's been really good in Mississippi, not just saltwater, but freshwater as well. Okay, so coming back to you, Houston, we mentioned that we're hoping that we have a winter. We don't just mean a winter good for winter for us or a wet winter for us, but there has to be a sequential series of events that happen as it relates to the weather that's going to keep the ducks coming south in the Mississippi Flyway in a way that's beneficial to the Mississippi Delta and other areas of Mississippi. Kind of talk about what those sequence of events need to be, starting with Canada.
Sure. Yeah. So really, I guess to back all the way up, the first ingredient is strong breeding populations, which ducks have had relatively strong breeding populations for the last several years. So we feel like we're still in pretty good shape there from the surveys that are conducted in May across the prairies of Canada and the northern U.S. And then secondly, we need relatively wet weather on those breeding grounds so they can reproduce, so they can have strong wetland habitat and associated grasslands around those wetlands to raise young. Because, a lot of times hunters will see those breeding numbers that come out and they'll think that makes or breaks a duck season. But those birds have a lot of work to do after those surveys are done. Raising young and being able to introduce those birds into what we call the fall flight. And so not this past summer, but the summer before, there was a drought that a lot of waterfowl hunters heard about on the prairies of Canada and the northern U.S. Conditions were a little better this year in a lot of places, and so we're hoping that that's going to equate to better reproduction on the breeding grounds, and those birds will be available to come south and ride those hopeful cold fronts that are going to be coming from the north. Earlier, you mentioned, talking about the deer movements, and that reminded me kind of a related story in the waterfowl world. We got a band return, so hunting season is open in Canadian provinces in the northern U.S. right now. Waterfowl hunters are already getting after it and kicking off the season. We had a band return from a wood duck that was banded, I think, in 2018 here in Mississippi. Was harvested in southern Ontario, Canada, last week. And so, that's happened a few times before, but that is a really impressive journey, to think about a local wood duck here that, no telling how many times since 2018 when it was banded that it made that trip, but it did find its way to Canada at least one time.
Well, we've talked about that before on prior shows, and it's worthy of talking about again, the banding program you guys have. When you think of banding, you think of a greenhead, you think of a mallard, a Drake mallard. You don't, when we think of migration, we don't typically think of a wood duck. People think of wood ducks as being, I've got this Cypress Lake and, the resident wood ducks are the resident wood ducks, but they also are migratory. So talk a little bit about what y'all are learning.
That's right. Mississippi has a strong resident wood duck population, and many of the birds that we ban during the summertime in Mississippi will stay local, and some of those, a large portion of that harvest will be Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, but then we also do get those really long travelers. A lot of times it's going to be a juvenile male that pairs with a migratory female after it's banded, and he follows her back to where she was raised, and that's how we typically get those really long traveling wood ducks. But we are, throughout the wintertime, picking up more migratory wood ducks that are coming from northern states and kind of increasing our population throughout the winter, just like with other more common, dabbling duck species that are migratory that hunters think about, like you mentioned, with mallards and so on.
Hey, when you guys are doing the banding, so talk about the process real quick, and how many do you get to band?
We try to band, we really try to band as many as we can, but we're usually shooting for around 400 wood ducks in Mississippi during the summertime. That's kind of the number that we're looking to get to every year. And so we're banding birds that are here during the summertime because we know that's our resident population that we're trying to get a marked sample on. Basically getting them concentrated into an area and then shooting a rocket net over them to catch live birds. We go out and as quickly as we can, get them out of the net, age them, identify the sex, and put a uniquely identified aluminum leg band on each bird and release them into the wild. So it's a trophy for hunters, and hunters think that that's why we do it, and it is a good thing to do. But we get a lot of good information on what the population's doing and where these birds are going from those band returns.
I had Ricky Flynn on recently. He talked about that 10-foot alligator that broke the state record, just barely missing the world record. And the history that he had with that alligator, and where they tagged it, and was very near where they actually ultimately harvested the alligator. But I remember him, being super enthusiastic about learning that alligator had been taken, so they could get some measurements off of it and really start to understand what were some of the specifics about it in terms of age, et cetera. But it's interesting when you mentioned about getting a tagged a back from a wood duck up in Canada. You lit up for people who are not watching this on Super Talk TV or Facebook or YouTube. That's really a cool moment for you guys, and from a research point of view, isn't it?
Oh, it is. I tell people that, every band is a story, and, we those band returns that we get back and actually see the end of the story, it's always really exciting. It never gets old for me when we get those emails with the list of, what has been reported comes in. I'm always really anxious to take a look at those and see if there's anything really interesting in there.
Yeah, we have we tag a bunch of fish here in coastal Mississippi, all different kinds of species. But over the years, the cobia or ling or lemonfish have been one that's had a very good tagging program over many, many years. And I caught one many years ago. And it was, I was caught relatively close to where it was originally tagged. But, we've had some tagged in coastal Mississippi that have made it up to the Atlantic coast. It's just incredible what you learn about a species when there's a really coordinated, well-coordinated tagging program where you're really keeping great records, and you have that program ongoing for year after year after year. It's incredible what you learn. So much to learn about that. So as you think about this upcoming season, you sort of talked about it to some extent as it relates to the flyway, but we've had too many years in a row where all those killer dimensions to a great season didn't fall into place. A lot of people like to say that maybe the migration has shifted a little bit more to the west or whatever. You still think there's some great duck hunting that could happen in Mississippi if the conditions fall into place the way they need to?
Absolutely. Yeah, there's no doubt in my mind that Mississippi is going to continue to be a strong waterfowl hunting state. That's evidenced by the number of waterfowl stamps that we sell here in Mississippi. Those numbers continue to go up. In other places, those numbers are going down. And the waterfowl numbers that we're seeing are still good. We hope that we catch some years where they're getting here earlier and staying longer. We typically get peak numbers of duck migration here into Mississippi, particularly in the Mississippi Delta, early or late January. But we would definitely prefer them to come earlier during the year, starting the season off around Thanksgiving and staying throughout. But yeah.
Houston, let's do this. Let's pick it up right there on the other side. We're at the end of the segment, but this is Houston Havens, the waterfowl program coordinator for the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks, and we'll finish this part of the conversation on the other side. We'll see you after this break.
Mississippi till I'm dead and gone. Just carry on. I'll carry
on. We live in one of the best places in America to enjoy the outdoors. So let's talk about it. It's Super Talk Outdoors with Ricky Matthews on Super Talk Mississippi.
Welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors. This is the place where we celebrate every single Monday at lunchtime the world-class outdoors of the state of Mississippi, and I have my friend Houston Havens, who is the waterfowl program coordinator for the state of Mississippi. It's that time of year. Hey, Houston, when you go around this state and people learn who you are, I bet there's no shortage of people who want to talk to you about duck hunting.
We do get a lot of questions this time of year. Really as soon as those draw hunt applications that we talked about get on the website, that kind of kicks off people getting their minds. kind of focused around waterfowl hunting. Of course, a lot of people that duck hunt are also deer hunters, and so there's some mixed interest in all that. But yeah, the phones and the email will start to heat up here pretty soon. People want to know what we're starting to see leading up to the season. They'll be asking about different wildlife management areas, what the habitat's looking like, and so a lot of public outreach to come here in the next couple of months.
Okay, so listen, I got a question for you. I hear people say this a lot, that pond over there has a lot of memory on it, or that field over there has got a bunch of memory, or that Cypress Lake's got some memory on it, meaning that there's some generational connection to that pond or that lake or whatever. Is that pretty real? And how does memory go away? How does a lake that used to perform extraordinarily well, suddenly you don't really get many ducks at it anymore? Will those ducks come back again? What's the thoughts about that?
Yeah, I certainly think it is a real thing. In the waterfowl world or in the wildlife world, the term is phallopatry. Birds, going back to the same areas that they've used before. It's really strong on the breeding grounds. Hen will often go right back to the very specific area where she's had a successful nest in the past. And we think that a lot of that still translates also when they're coming south to the wintering grounds. A lot of times with private landowners that we work with, we'll hear that scenario where, this used to be a really great area, and to them it looks the same as it always used to, but it's not as good anymore. Sometimes it could be slight changes in the habitat or water levels on that specific wetland that might have changed and become less desirable for waterfowl. Or a lot of times it might be something in the local landscape that they're not really seeing every day, not necessarily on their property, but ducks are traveling hundreds and thousands of miles to get here. They're highly mobile, and so they use a much larger area than most single properties. And so they're really reading the landscape and assessing habitat in different places. We call it the habitat complex that birds are using. They've got to have different habitat types to meet different needs depending on what the weather's doing, if they need to really get high carbohydrates for energy when it's really cold. And so it's a really complex equation going on there, and it's not always just this field or this duck hole. It's a much broader landscape type effect that they're looking at.
And one of the things you pointed out on past shows is that you may have on that farm a perfect scenario where you're pumping water, you've done some stuff that provided food for the ducks. Just a perfect scenario. But as you pointed out, that situation may be perfect. It may be you've done everything you needed to do to make your hunt the best it can be. But a confluence of other things might come into play. So one of the most significant that you pointed out is that how does that piece of property fit into the larger area? How much wetland loss and habitat loss has there been over the last 20 years relative to that place? And that could cause a real change. And one of the things I pointed out to you, the other thing is that if the weather conditions are not what they need to be up north and the ducks aren't being pushed down because there's not enough cold weather there, one of the farms, like for example the Shula farm, and like the second week in February 2 years ago, I've never seen so many mallards on the water there. They just came late. So you're seeing a lot of that, aren't you? The ducks are coming, but they're just coming late.
Well, we do have some years certainly where that happens. A lot of times, in that early February to mid-February time frame, we see what we call the board pulling effect, where farmers in particular, they're using that land to make a living, and we certainly don't blame them for pulling that water off after duck season and starting to get fields ready for the planting season in the spring. But there's a significant reduction in available wetland habitat as soon as duck season ends. We see that a lot through our waterfowl surveys. And so when ducks have less habitat available, they pack into and concentrate into fewer areas. And so a lot of times that duck hole that's right off the highway that, hunters may not have seen a single bird in all year, if it's left flooded when a lot of the other habitat has been drained down, birds are going to use what's available to them, and so they'll often pack into those areas.
It's always interesting to spend time with you, Houston Havens, the waterfowl coordinator for the state of Mississippi. It's been it's always fun to spend time with you guys. I mean, you're so passionate about what you're doing, and maybe your gut tells you we're going to have a better season this year. That's what I hear you saying. I hope you're right.
Always going to be optimistic about it. Sure.
I know you are. Anyway, it's been a pleasure to catch up with you, my friend. We'll see you very soon.
Thanks, you too. Appreciate it.
As I end every show, always stay safe. When you are in the outdoors, put safety first. Please always put safety first. God bless you, and we'll see you next Monday.
Mississippi till I'm